Right now, Pittsburgh's best sports show is about to begin. Call us or tweet us. We've got things to talk about on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call.
All right, thanks a lot, Ken, and thank you for tuning into the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. I'm Rich Walsh. I'll be joined by Jason Mackey in a matter of moments from Studio A over there. And Jason, you know, how about these Bucks right now? I mean, it's just been awful. 4 of the last 6, right? Double digits against. And you would think if you could score 31 runs in the last 4 games, you would at least win the majority of those, right? They're 0-4.
The pitching has just been awful, Rich. It really has. In the bullpen, an area that was supposed to be a strength for the Pirates, it has decidedly been not that lately. 64 runs in their past 6 games. I can't believe it. I mean, it's always been something this season. If it hasn't been the offense, it's been the pitching or it's been the fundamentals. It's just a really ugly stretch for the Pirates. I was curious how they would come out of that Cubs sweep, whether they would make some sort of statement in Cleveland. And the offense, to a degree, did that. Andrew McCutchen was very good tonight, but Bailey Falter doesn't stick around too long. Carmen Mlodzinski, who's actually been good this season when he's been healthy, was not good. And, yeah, I mean, Cleveland's a good team, but they're not that good.
I guess the statement right now is, so Derek Shelton benched David Bednar. What does that say, you know, about where they are right now, but also what does that do to his confidence? I mean, where are they with this situation? And you're going to bench him now. How does that help?
Rich, I don't think you can do anything other than that. I mean, you can't keep running him out there. I don't know what it means for David Bednar long term. I don't have any magic answers. I just know that he's not reliable. I mean, if they had a lead tonight, how confident would you feel going to David Bednar? I would not feel confident at all. Aroldis Chapman is their better option there. They're going to have to do it by committee, sort of figure out what it looks like, matchup-wise or whatever. But I don't know what it means for his future. I hear a lot of people screaming at me about, DFA him or get rid of him. I mean, you're on the hook for his contract. That really doesn't make any sense. I don't think that's a realistic solution, at least for this year. Bednar is going to be going through arbitration again this winter, assuming the Pirates tender him a contract. They're not really on the hook for anything more than that. You hope that he gets right. You hope that he uses this final stretch to get back to what he was. But right now, you can't figure out 3 weeks from now. You have to figure out today, and that is that Bednar needs to pitch better, and he's got a lot of stuff wrong.
How about the best move might be to put him on IL, right?
It could. But, I mean, if he's completely healthy, I wouldn't put him on the IL. I'd let him work through his problems. I would just let him work through his problems in lower leverage roles. I mean, everything we know publicly is that David Bednar is perfectly healthy. Now, I see 97 right down the middle, right down Broadway. I mean, that's going to get hit. Other times he's had zero command of his secondary stuff. That's also not going to work. And that's also not the David Bednar that we've seen in the past. So if he's completely healthy and he's just sort of lost it, if he's, compensating for something earlier, bad habits have crept in, whether he's tipping his pitches, I don't know. But I'm not immediately going to the IL stint because it may be the best thing for him to work through some stuff and for the Pirates really to evaluate over this final month, like what do we have here? Because they're going to have a business decision to make this offseason.
Well, those are really their only 2 options because of that business decision you're talking about. I mean, you got to keep him around and hope that he rebounds so you can get some value for him if you decide to let him go and trade him or something. But right now, I mean, you're saying you're getting messages. I mean, you can't DFA the guy right now. And obviously he has no value to be able to trade him in the offseason.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough spot for sure. And I don't think they would go this route, but I mean, you could non-tender him and say, we just don't want to pay him what he's going to get via arbitration. We don't feel like it's going to be worth it. And if they look at this final month and he's completely healthy and can't get it together, I mean, maybe that's a route they consider. I don't know. I mean, I think ideally you try to drill down into some details with David Bednar with pitch usage, location, sequencing, how his body's moving, all this stuff, and try to figure it out. And then if you end the season and he hasn't been your closer, but you at least feel good about his progress, then you've got some information with which to make a decision on about tendering him a contract. I still believe in David Bednar. I think there's a very good pitcher in there. I don't think it's worth DFAing him. I mean, you're still on the hook for his contract. Like I said, that's really not going to do anything. It's just an impulsive, emotional decision. But, yeah, long term, they are going to have to figure out how much they want to stick with him. And you mentioned it earlier, Rich. I mean, his trade value right now is nothing. So what are you going to do?
How can you go from being that good to that bad? I mean, we've seen it before, but it seems like the Pirates always have this bad luck. I mean, you had an opportunity to get a boatload for him last year, and now you're going to get absolutely nothing. And maybe even next year you wouldn't have got as much as you would have had last year.
Well, and that's why I think they're probably going to ride this out and hope that he finds it. How do I explain it? I mean, tipping pitches is honestly something that I think is a concern. It's been a concern for Mitch Keller. It's a concern for other guys. But you look at David Bednar's location. A lot of times when he's been hit hard, I think he's given up 8 home runs this season. That's more than he's given up in the past 2 seasons. Guys are sitting on pitches that they seemingly know are coming. Now, can you correct that? I don't know. Can his pitch location be better? I mean, any major league hitter is going to hit 97 right down the middle out of the park. You can't do that. So, I mean, Bednar has a greater track record of not doing that than he does just serving up meatballs. So I'm willing to sort of hear it out, to see what he can do. They don't really have any better options, to be honest with you. It's not like they have a bevy of relievers in the minor leagues just pushing for time. I know people are going to bring up, Bubba Chandler, Thomas Harrington, something like that. Those roles are different. You're talking about back-end guys. Now, the Pirates their business probably changed in the past week with O'Neal Cruz now being a center fielder. How are you going to spend your money this offseason? I'm looking at David Bednar and some other things in the bullpen thinking, man, they better spend some money on the bullpen because what we've seen is not good enough.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And right now, if you're looking at it, they have no closer for next year. So that's a spot that they got to fill too. All right, we got to take a break. We're going to take your phone calls. 412-575-2600 is the number. Back in a couple minutes. All right, welcome back to the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. This is our GMC tweet of the night, and this is from the PFF Steelers Twitter page, or X, or whatever you want to call them now. Keanu Benton, this preseason, and you can look at those numbers. Jason, now that we're on the Steelers topic right here, I think this guy's going to be an absolute star this year. I expect a big year from Ben. He's shown a lot, and that defensive front, I think, is so much better with him in the lineup than obviously if he's not.
No doubt, Richie. I like what I've seen as well. You and I have been at the same practices, the same time in Latrobe. I've liked a lot from Benton. I think this defense can be actually very good. We've spent a lot of time talking about the offense and consternation over Arthur Smith and are they going to score enough points, Russell Wilson versus Justin Fields. What about the wide receiver room, the new offensive line, this, that, and the other? Yeah, I agree with you. Quietly, I think the defense can be a strength, needs to be a strength. Money is allocated as such. Keanu Benton is in the middle, and I think he gained a lot of valuable experience as a rookie, a big physical nose tackle. And they're not super deep there, but I like the guys they have starting.
Yeah, and you know what? The one thing I noticed about him, he's confident. He's a confident player. Once you get to that point, especially as a second-year player, you can only go up.
Yeah, and they need to be able to stop the run, too. I think they go hand in hand. If the Steelers are able to stop the run, let's also not forget they're going to get, hopefully, a healthy version of Cam Hayward. They get the best of Larry Ogunjobi. The front should be good enough. I question, if there's an injury, who's it going to look like? Dean Lowry, we didn't see a ton from him. Isaiah Loudermilk, maybe. DeMarvin Leal, they might be using him more as an outside linebacker, maybe a rotating guy. Not sure who's going to spell somebody if there's an injury, but yeah, I like Benton's personality. I like the edge that can exist on that side of the ball. You know who else I've really liked, Richie, and the confidence factor, and somebody who I think has brought a lot to this team is Patrick Queen. I think there's an attitude there. I think he really wants to be here, and he's made very good inroads with his teammates. But as I said earlier, this entire defense, but especially maybe the front seven, needs to be a strength.
Yeah, and also I want to add a motivated Cam Hayward to prove a lot of people wrong. I think that can do some damage, and I love Patrick Queen. I think he's a big upgrade, obviously, on inside. All right, let's go out to Scott out in Lebanon County. How you doing, Scott?
Hi, thanks for taking my call, Richie. I was even predicting before the season started that the Pirates were not going to make the postseason, and the shape they're in right now, including that historic BS that happened Wednesday between the Cubbies, will pretty much speak for itself. Also, I'm not sure if you guys agree on this, but unless a team files for bankruptcy protection, I have a pretty bad feeling that Bob Nutting will own the team for as long as his health permits. In other words, I don't think he'll ever sell the team, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, Scott, we both know Jason's over there more than I am and is tied in with more of that team than I am. But I've talked to Bob Nutting numerous times, and he's told me flat out that he wants to keep his team and hand it down to his daughters, right? Or daughter. I don't know how many kids he has, but I remember him talking to me about that. So I don't think Bob Nutting is going anywhere. And I think you're in the majority. because I don't think anyone thought the Pirates were going to be a playoff team. I thought they would be around at 500. I didn't expect this disaster of, last month or so to happen, but I didn't see them as a postseason team yet. Thought maybe potentially there when they had those 3 pitchers to maybe sneak in. But I was always thinking and hopeful that next year was the year.
Scott, if you were thinking playoffs before that Cubs series, I'm afraid I've got some bad news, my man. It's, the postseason, I haven't even looked at the wild card, but I know it's double digits at this point. Forget about the division. They need to be looking at next year, and frankly, they need to be looking at a lot bigger problems to be solved before we even talk about playoffs or anything. I feel like Jim Mora right now. Playoffs?
Yeah.
But, that's my interpretation on Bob Nutting as well for the second point that you made, that he wants to keep that in his family. And it's unfortunate, frankly. I mean, I've been a pretty fair beat reporter. Now as a columnist, it's, you're kind of letting things unfold. We're going to see where it goes. And right now, Bob Nutting is in charge of a 5-year plan that is very sour at the moment. I don't really see a path forward. And you look at the results since he's owned the team, it's just not enough good. So again, I'll hear them out the end of the season, but I have a tough time seeing how this team is going to make progress over 76 wins. And if you stick with that, if you stick with what has fallen short of your own stated expectations, I'm sorry, you can't do that.
Is it fair to say that he's doing the public a disservice owning this team?
Yeah, I guess. Here's where I come down on that, Richie. I mean, spending money is not everything to me. That's not defending their spending habits. They should spend, more than they do. They should stay competitive in that. Now, they went for a full-on rebuilding plan, and they're coming out of it, and they've shown some good signs. But there's some problems here. Now, if Bob would just, sit on his hands and not doing anything, yeah, I think that's a public disservice. Like, you can see that this is not working. You can see, you say before the season that you want progress and you want to see the Pirates make the playoffs or be in contention throughout. They're nowhere close. A disservice to fans, to the city, is allowing that to continue. So I want to hear them out. I want to see how this finishes. I want to see how Bob handles it. He spent $18 million to make Clint Hurdle and Neil Huntington go away when that was the direction this franchise needed. It needed a full-scale rebuild. I don't think everything is as bad as maybe it seems right now, but the current stuff is not good enough. So you need to recalibrate this offseason and get back to competition in 2025.
Yeah, it might need another overhaul this
offseason.
I mean, I'm saying might. I'm not there yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if it happened. But also what I'm afraid of, Jason, is that this last month and a half has given him an excuse not to add to this team or not to spend some money in the free agency.
Oh, it better not have. I mean, if anything, it should be more. If anything, it should be more. I mean, that's sort of what I'm saying is it's possible to win on a budget. Look at the team the Pirates played tonight, the Cleveland Guardians. They don't spend a ton of money and they win. The Baltimore Orioles don't spend a ton of money and they win. The Tampa Bay Rays don't spend a ton of money and they win. I went into this thing, I started my beat tenure when they sort of blew this thing up and started from scratch, which I understand. And saying they stunk in 20, 21, 22, that's fine, but that was largely intentional. And last year was supposed to kind of be a transition year. This year was supposed to be a competitive year. That hasn't happened. Now, if I look at their farm system, yeah, it's not great right now. I understand that they're in a worse position now than they were when they did a full-scale rebuild. But you do have a lot of pitchers specifically, but guys at the upper levels of the minor leagues who can contribute right away. They have the makings of actually a pretty darn good starting rotation. They've locked some guys in for long-term contracts, and they have a couple of key adds that they need to make this winter. And they might have a situation where the guy managing the team is not the right guy. They've got a hitting approach that I don't think, is anything they should continue with. So does Bob Nutting make these key moves that he needs to make? I think there's a lot riding on that. I still think they can be a halfway decent team in 2025.
Yeah, me too. Let's go out to John in Cranberry. How you doing, John?
Thanks for taking my call.
Yep.
And happy Labor Day weekend to both of you. First of all, too, I wanted to send condolences to the Gaudreau family. What a tragedy that was for the NHL world and for the Blue Jackets and that family. It's just
so sad.
Driving accident was just devastating. But what I wanted to talk to you guys, I was going to ask you about Shelton and Cherry. We just kind of answered that. So my next question that I was going to cover is basically now that the rosters expand on Sunday, when are we going to see the end of Grandal, Taylor, Triolo, Connor Joe? Don't we want to see York and Cook and Pagoro come up? So I wanted to ask you and Jason, is that going to happen on Sunday? Are we going to, when the rosters expand, or what are we waiting for? What are we going to see these new faces to see who we have for 2025? Thanks
John, great call. It better happen, Jason, because, I mean, the team's out of it. What else do they got to play for? Let's see what these young guys can do.
Yeah, well, and not only that, Richie, let me add another layer, and thanks for the call, John. I think this is an important part of the Pirates season. Billy Cook, Nick York are two names that you bring up. They're Rule 5 eligible this winter. So that means the Pirates need to decide to either add them to the 40-man roster or they become among the players that other teams can select and poach in the Rule 5 draft. So you'd like to have that intel. I do think that those guys are going to come up when rosters expand. I don't know what they're going to do with Grandal. Right now, those to me aren't, lanes that really intersect. You could send down Jared Triolo right now, who has options. I don't think we really need to see any more of that. I think Alika Williams is still with them. I don't need to see any more of that. So, I mean, those are two spots you can you don't even need to send two out, but you can bring two in. Anyway, I think we're going to see some shuffling here in September. For whatever reason, this isn't a defense of it. This is just something I've been around and observed. They kind of use September. They need that switch to flip to sort of expand the rosters and get a little bit more creative. But if they still have any belief that they're in a playoff race at this point, no.
Yeah. All right, we got to take a break. Back in a couple minutes.